Hey, Mark, can you remind me again where it is in the Bible where it says, give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man the fish and he can feed himself for a lifetime.
Yeah. It's the book of Job, right after it speaks about taking the great fish, the Leviathan, and feeding him and pulling him by a hook in his nose. That then God also says, teach a man to fish.
Right. But there was some controversy with that in the book because like this fish was so big that it could have fed everybody.
Actually, okay. You're trying to do a bit, but in the Jewish Midrash tradition, they did say that God killed the Leviathan in the beginning of creation.
Right, yeah.
Salted it and stored it away for the righteous to eat in the life to come. So that's what we're eating in heaven, baby. It's nothing but fish. Nothing but fish.
And that's why we eat fish on Fridays.
That is exactly why. Welcome to New Polity Podcast, where we teach you to make friends with the mammon of iniquity. I'm here with DJ Palestine, Jacob Imam, who has once had money, and I, who really hope Joe Biden forgives my student debts. And between us, we have the qualifications necessary, I think, to tell you what the Bible says about money. And not just the Bible, but the whole tradition of the church.
So that's what we're going to do. And today we're going to talk specifically about this idea of teaching a man to fish.
Who said that? Like, really, though?
It sounds like a Benjamin Franklin thing, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you've heard this, right? So the teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a... No, I got it wrong. Give a man a fish.
Let's just say that it was
Benjamin Franklin said in page 27 of his famous book, It's Me, Benjamin Franklin. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. And I don't know about you, Jacob, but growing up, conservatives would sort of say this in response usually to like a question of government handouts or sort of unthought charitable giving. It would be a way for them to say, don't necessarily just give things, right? Like give people the ability. I mean, this is the best view, I think, of the phrase. Give them the ability to get those things for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is even more of a charitable read or applied in a more good way than it usually than I usually heard it growing up. Usually I heard it when we were passing a homeless guy on the street. And it was like, don't give him that fish. Don't you do it. Don't you dare give that man that fish.
Yeah.
Because it was like more go off and make a job for him to work.
Oh, wow. So actually not even, so you're not even necessarily giving him the knowledge of how to fish in this fishy metaphor.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just sort of creating the conditions by which he might.
Yeah. So ironically,
Jacob.
They didn't even listen to this whole phrase.
Jacob, that's just evil.
I ain't defending it today.
Well, it's interesting because it sort of reminds me of, I think it's a letter of James in the New Testament where it says, don't walk past a man and say, if he's cold, like, be warm, be well, give him your coat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in a similar way, it's actually just forgetting the second half of the phrase and saying like, gee, I hope somebody teaches him to fish sometime. But
totally. Yeah. It's like, if you don't just pass a man and say to pray for him,
But the point is,
I mean, even when Peter and John passed the beggar by the temple, at least they gave him the ability to walk again.
That's true. And I think there's a resonance here for Christians. There's a nice resonance because fish are fundamental, weirdly, to the Gospels. They're in the Old Testament, they're in the New Testament, they're the sign of the Christian. So I don't think it's an accident.
They're also the sign of the nation.
Yeah, exactly. And so it takes a kind of broader exegesis. But there's a reason why this phrase, I think, resonates strongly with like the conservative mind, which is already steeped in Christianity, to say that when we talk about economics, we're going to do it through this primary metaphor of fish. I think it's actually really cool. It might be the only good thing I can say about it at this point. But so what we're going to do is we're going to look at that and say, okay, fine, let's have the fish metaphor, and then let's ask, what does the church say we should be doing with the man who's hungry and wants to eat trout?
Or something better. Trout's not bad. But
I don't know.
Anyway, so let's look at this idea. Okay. So there is this fundamental concept that usually the conservative is responding to, where the socialist will say, you got to give that man a fish every day for the rest of because you give him one fish, he's going to die tomorrow.
Right. AKA welfare.
Yeah. AKA welfare. So what's the problem with this? And that this phrase, teach a man to fish, captures.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah. Question mark. Sorry.
Well, it just seems, I think there's something good here, right? That it just seems lame to be feeding a grown man.
I
know that we're mixing metaphors here because, it's not just food that people need, right? But the reason the metaphor has power is you get this vision of, okay, I've got to give this man something, and then I have to give it to him again, and I give it to him again. And really what that is, it just seems like a form of power over that person. It's like they're totally dependent on you for the food. And if you take the analogy to what it actually is trying to say, it's like, well, then you have people who are totally dependent on the welfare state for their basic material existence. They depend on the government. They're dependent on, they don't learn. So that, because that's the second part of the metaphor, right? They don't develop the habit, the skill, the ability by which they can provide for themselves and then be able to provide for others.
Yeah.
And I think that's super cool. I mean, the critique is cool.
The critique is cool. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think the critique is correct in a real sense. Primarily, there's this understanding that you need to have, there is an understanding of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get to work, bust your butt.
Can we
don't
do something on bootstraps at some point?
Yeah.
I've never seen a bootstrap, but I'm supposed to do so much on their basis.
It's because you never lived in Texas, man. What are those? Yeah, you have a zipper on the bootstrap at that back.
I got Andrew Willard Jones just rips into me every time I wear zipper boots.
I've seen him do it.
It's this millennial thing for him. It's equivalent to liking avocado toast or something. He's like, oh, here's this douche in his zipper boots.
I've seen it one time in action. He's just insulting you for zipper boots, and then you kind of look down sheepishly at your feet, and he goes, oh. He didn't realize you were wearing them. He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. They're actually pretty cool, dude."
He was trying to pretend like he wasn't being. Yeah, no, zipper boots are convenient. Anyone who says otherwise has just got some weird ideological thing going on that they can't just admit that it's awesome to be able to take off your shoe and put it on in one fluid motion.
It is.
Forget them.
It's like
sure. My young 2-year-old child also has zipper boots, but you know what? I think there should be more unity between father and son in this troubled times. Okay, but we're not talking about bootstraps. We're talking about fish, and you were just diving a little deeper into what's right about the kind of conservative adage.
Yeah, no, because the idea with the economy as a whole is that you're raising people up into participation in it, where you're actually raising them to have real habits of soul, skills that they can contribute and then bless others with.
But why do you say that? You said the idea of the economy as a whole. What do you mean by that? What economy should be?
What an economy should be. Because oikonomia, Greek word, I promise it's not going to get too boring, but the word itself means household management. That's what the economy is. It's always based upon, is a household, is a family taken care of.
Right.
And this is the way that you find all the ancients starting out their commentaries on the politics. Aristotle most famously amongst them is that you can't have a political order until you have multiple economic orders. So you can't have a polity, a city, until you have multiple families.
Right.
And so so if you're going to take the model of the economy, and we should do this, to be the family itself, then we actually get to a place where we realize, oh, wow, we really do give people a fish every day. And we call those children. Right? So at that point, and this just happens for decades, where you just do give out fish every day.
Yep. Love you, Dad.
And there's nothing wrong at all with that. It's beautiful. It's how things should begin in our economy, with gift, with love, and we'll get to that more. But it's directed at raising up people so that they in turn can go about doing God's work.
Right.
Instead of always be, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve.
Yeah.
And we are being raised up into being sons of God, fellow brothers of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And insofar as we participate in his life, under God the Father, we are to serve and not be served.
I'm feeling it. And I think that, when Paul talks about rising to the full stature of Christ, he kind of redeems this, because I think you can get kind of pagan with this, right? The idea that the family is there to simply like produce powerful, independent individuals, right? So this is often how liberalism speaks of the family. It's like, why are you giving these kids fish? So they can leave your weird family zone and enter the real voting zone. It's so lame. There's nothing lamer than liberalism. But
why do we talk about lame things all the time?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
We'll get over it.
Yeah, it's totally. But what you're indicating here is this redemption in which, like, it's not a leaving of the family. Like, the family isn't orientated towards its own demise. It's actually orientated towards breaking open to this larger family of God, right? To raising citizens for heaven, ultimately.
That's right.
Which is super awesome. And what I like about so this is really the critique of socialism, right, in a certain way, or at least a critique of kind of like boring welfare statism, right, which is that it basically treats people like children that never grow up. So it's not simply that, and people will give us some, they'll give us some blowback on this, right? Like, this isn't how socialist states really work. There's, and yeah, maybe you can nuance the word socialism and talk about a particular time, particular place in which it's being implemented.
Yeah,
but I want to talk about our town, right? Yeah. Because, like, look, you can rag on conservatives for being heartless all you want, but it is a legitimate, actual problem that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who are habituated into just being children under the state.
Oh man!
And like, to deny this because of some kind of like recognition of their dignity, I think is foolish. Because the dignity, it's true that that is not what they are, and people do fall in hard times, and people do need assistance, yada yada yada. But man, when we look at our welfare systems, we're talking about the maintenance of a perpetual renting class. We're talking about people who are trained and born into second and third generations of families that have deep dependence, to the point where, like, I talk with some of my friends who are in this situation here in our town, and the greatest pride they have is in the maintenance of never working, of always being able to get disability and unemployment assistance in order to maintain a lifestyle that frankly is childish. Like, it tends to revolve around video games and such.
Yeah.
And it's not like this kind of reactionary thing to say that this is a real problem. And it really weakens, I think, the leftist case when they pretend like this doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I think that's true. But
not to get on my high horse. I'm sorry.
Well, no, but it's true, and people should know that this is not something that's too abstracted for us. We live in a small town where we have the highest percentage of HUD housing in the entire United States. So we're surrounded, as it were, by this problem. I'm not saying these people, but by this problem, which is administered by people who don't live here.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's frustrating. But I don't want to just say that this is a leftist agenda thing, an LBJ, war on poverty predicament that we still find ourselves in, because this would never happen. We would never actually even be in this situation if it wasn't for the capitalist agenda itself. I mean, the first time that you ever find a welfare state re-arising in Europe after Christendom was with the capitalism of King Henry VIII.
Whoa, I don't know any. Talk about that.
Well, Henry VIII seized the church property at the Reformation. Now, this church property was not just owned by bigwig cardinals and bishops who had, their steak every night and their lobster on the weekend. And we're really, cowing over the peasants of the land. It didn't operate like that at all, actually, much to the chagrin of the happy liberal that likes to harp against the Dark Ages. What it really was is that the church land was primarily common land, or rather could be distributed out to those who needed it. And that's really what happened. And that's why we didn't have a welfare state, is because the church itself was giving productive property to people in order that they might be raised out of their dilemma.
So actually giving them land to farm on? You mean?
Yeah.
Wow. Really? Wow. Awesome.
And so as soon as that land was seized by Henry and given out to what Belloc called the Reformation capitalists, millionaires, whereas that's very different. But he says that this was the founding of the capitalist state. So that's why I mix it up.
That's so depressing.
Because what happens at that point is that capital, productive labor, productive property, was put in the hands of few to be managed for many.
Right.
And this, maybe it sounds like socialism or kind of a matured communism. And really, that's what that was as well. But it was the beginning of a competitive free market, as it were, with some people winning the free market competition, and others losing.
You're touching on something that's another conservative adage, which I think we should look at in reference to this question of what to do with our fish, which is that when conservatives talk about charity, they often distinguish in a kind of like reminiscent boomer-esque way between what used to happen, where they say, when I was young, the church would take care of the poor, the churches would take care of the poor, and in contradistinction to now it's the state, now it's the welfare state, right?
Yeah.
And they say this as like a kind of this is a sign of the decline of our great civilization, and it's like, okay, yeah, to a certain extent, but if you really look at what the church, okay, and I'm not talking about Protestant, sort of Protestantized denominations with soup kitchens, which are doing good work. What I'm talking about is what you're saying. The church wasn't simply the handout machine that could as easily come from the state, right? Which the moment that you're just talking about the churches, why not? Like, what's the problem? Just think of the state as a big church, and it gives handouts. Why are you mad about that? You just want your handouts to come from like people that aren't bureaucrats. Okay, well let's not.
Okay, I won't.
Come on, man.
I'll get into it later.
The state is a church. That's the most ridiculous thing. Okay, we're back. What you're saying is that the church gave productive property to the poor. Right. Which is something that neither the churches in their charity nor the state in its programs is doing right now.
Right.
So both are welfare statist departures from distribution.
Right. Well, I think people see where we're going with this, but let's just, before we get into it too much,
We need more fish.
Let's just talk about fish again. So what if we change this adage a little bit, instead of saying like, hey, it's kind of heartless not to like give a man a fish when he's hungry, and then you're just like training him instead. I mean, that's kind of rough. I mean, you think about that very heartwarming Will Smith movie years ago, The Pursuit of Happiness, where the guy's like has a volunteered, what was that thing, like a internship, as it were. And then he's like has to work for months for free while he's living in a bathroom. And nobody wants to live in a bathroom. And until he finally gets the job, he cultivates the skill, he gets his career, and then he like makes millions eventually. Exactly. American dream come true. Brought to you by Hollywood. But that's heartless. How is it that we could say that that's a good thing? Of course, you need to give that man a fish at the same time. Get him and his child out of the bathroom. It's just wrong. So, but I think there's still a problem with that too. So
the problem with giving a fish, and you're combining them. So you're saying give a man a fish and teach him to fish. Why distinguish these?
Because
that sounds pretty good to me.
Well, it's on the right track. It's a lot better than just leaving the man in the bathroom.
Right. I'm sorry, like the fish metaphor and the bathroom thing are like combining in my head.
That guy is like, trying to get
you're like throwing a fish at him when he's
out of the crapper. But the issue, of course, is that that man left to another plight or distance from you is not able to he's not actually matured. What he actually has is still an absolute dependence on you, because he doesn't have a fishing pole. So we're at this place where he's cultivating the skill.
Yep.
He has things to eat.
Yep.
But he's now at best a servant of yours because he's using your things.
I see.
To probably work for you at a certain point.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so this goes back to what you were saying, the interpretation in your hometown was, right? Which is that what you do to teach a man to fish is you provide the capacity for him to get a job.
Yeah, but even then, growing up, it was always let the impersonal forces of the market take its, play out. And it might not be this guy that we're helping, but it'll be another guy that we're helping.
Okay.
So it's already impersonal.
So there's a threefold obligation. You give the man a fish, that is, you meet his immediate material needs because, damn it, he's a brother in Christ.
Yep.
And you don't leave him on the road.
Yep.
Okay. Number 2, you teach a man to fish, right? Because it is true that merely providing for material needs without treating a person as an adult, right, who has a destiny, who is destined to rise to the full stature of Christ within the church.
Yeah, see the dynamism there, that you're lifting them up, you're rising. That rising is like a real period in their life. That's going from childhood to adulthood, and that doesn't happen at the blink of an eye.
Totally. So you also at the same time you teach them to provide for themselves, but you don't make this kind of weird conservative blind spot thing where you imagine that somehow pure job creation or pure teaching, like skill development or something silly like that.
Go to university.
Yeah. Learn to code. As if that itself will somehow produce a productive member of society. It's like, no, you have to give them productive property.
So
you have got to. And that's the fishing pole.
Yeah. So give the man a fish.
Give him a fish.
Well, you teach him to fish. With the fishing pole that you gave him.
With the fishing pole that you gave him. I mean, it's awesome, right? It's awesome. And it's just what I think any good father does. It goes right back to real economics.
Yes.
There's this difference.
We have to talk about real economics.
Right. And real economics is always analogously, but still always attached to the household.
Right.
And so a father does not teach his son to fish and then deny him the use of a fishing rod.
Yeah, fathers give good gifts.
They give good gifts. Yeah. That's right.
So, but it really does speak to this idea as well, that real poverty cannot be abolished, eradicated, solved, fixed without gift. Like the order of love really does offer the solution and the only solution.
But isn't this like
poverty?
This is like the fundamental problem that the Catholic mind. This is the fundamental conflict, right? Because if you look at the left, they're not saying gift. In fact, what they're despairing in the idea that gift will solve anything, and so they're saying redistribution through the force of the state, right? And by which they don't necessarily mean the redistribution of productive property. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But in the capitalist is the same thing. He's despairing in gift as solving the problem of poverty, and so he's saying work through work. I was gonna just quote Auschwitz. Work will set you free. Sorry. You ever accidentally quote the gates of Auschwitz because you're just trying to describe a capitalist position?
Dude, that's scary.
Does that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, unknowingly.
Yeah, but in both cases, what's being despaired in is that gift is really possible, right? And gift that is a real separation. So this is a problem that people have a lot when they think of, okay, I want to give someone something, but they don't actually want to separate from what they're giving. And so what they end up is creating a more detailed relationship of dependence. Like, oh, I want to give someone, and by what I want to give to someone, what do I mean by that? I mean, I want to give them a job, right? And that job is still totally dependent on your capital. So you create a class of renters or people who just need a wage or things like that.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. Is when people think about giving somebody a job today, it's giving them a service sector job that they do not have ownership of the company,
right? Where
they are working 9 to 5, taking orders, which again, like these aren't bad things in and of themselves, but they never raise up the person into adulthood.
And the popes have said this again and again, that labor it should be orientated towards ownership.
Talk about this for a second, because there's another problem that we kind of missed with the whole teach a man to fish thing, is that once that guy has the real skills, then he has labor but no capital. He doesn't have the fishing pole, and labor without capital is unemployment.
Right. I know, it's totally true. Like, and this is actually true. Like, people,
or it's servitude. It's one of the two. It's either unemployment or you're a servant.
Well, I want to talk directly to unemployment, and you talk to servitude, because here in the Middle West, the idea, as different mills have closed and coal has sort of just continued to decline as a source of income, there's been a lot of people telling the poor of our particular region to learn to code, to retrain themselves within the digital economy, blah, blah, blah. So I have a friend who did just that. He did it. He got into a program that was sort of a development program from people in California taking pity on Appalachia. God bless them.
Over here eating our raisin pie. I don't know why I turned into a Southerner.
I don't know.
That's not really why we talk. Yeah.
And he did. So he did. He went, learned code. It was a 2-year program, I think. And then he got out and couldn't get a job. Literally could not get a job anywhere, because number one, the things he'd learned were already being superseded.
Right.
To really get the jobs that he needed a whole nother degree of training, which would be another like 2 years. And most of the companies that were doing big tech were farming out their coding work overseas. And the idea, why am I complaining about this? Oh, I mean, because why am I complaining about this?
Because to give a man skills with no job.
Is skills with no
capital.
No capital. Yep.
Yeah.
Unemployment.
Yeah, it's unemployment. So, but there's also the other side, is where it's just servitude. And again, it's better to be a servant than on your butt with no with no job at all and no way of taking care of your family.
And the prodigal son says, right? Like, treat me as a slave in your household.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is, it is a step up from being in the pig slop. But you also find that this is something that God directly speaks about in his law in Leviticus, and again in Deuteronomy, where he says that if your brother falls on hard times, sells all he has, can't get off the ground even with a loan that you give him, which of course you don't have interest on, then you take him into your home as a servant, as an indentured servant, but not just him, his whole family. You care for the whole family, which is expensive to do. They might break even on what they produce for you if you do have productive property and they're working on your land and such, but it's very, very expensive. So this really is an act of charity on the part of on the brother who takes in his brother and his family. But it's not meant to be that way, and it's not meant to stay that way. And that's the whole point of the year of Jubilees, where people will go back to the land that they had previously owned. And that's what God has ordered the universe to be, where it's all this cosmic gift to all of us. And we are to help our brothers receive that gift. So our job is to participate in that gift giving of God. And that really does mean giving big gifts away to people when we can. And most of us who are listening to this don't have productive property ourselves.
Sure, yeah, we're all renting.
We're all renters. We're a community of renters here in America. But this is something that we all need to be working towards as well. Never presuming gift on the part. I mean, it gets a little bit complicated. We do have a right as children of God, but we also have to be strategic about how we ourselves can get out of rent.
Let's challenge. Challenge 5 practical ways, right, in which we either as people on the receiving end or on the giving end can implement the Catholic fishy ideal, namely to give a man a fish, to teach him to fish, and to give him a fishing rod. Yeah. All right. I'm going to start off because I have an idea.
Okay.
Raise the minimum wage. Advocate for it and give it. And I don't mean necessarily just the minimum wage in the sense of like what the state sets as the minimum wage. I mean, raise your wages. Because listen to me.
Wait, so clarifying here, he's not asking Joe Biden to raise the federal minimum wage.
Well, you'd have to talk me out of that because I'm ignorant as to its effects. It seems to me like that just propounds the problem, but I don't know for sure. What I'm saying is this. The popes have been pretty clear that it is not a great condition to just be getting a wage. Like, it's not the point of labor.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So what they advocate for is sort of what you're talking about. If, in fact, we find ourselves in the situation of just earning a wage, which is not how the world is supposed to be, okay, then it's expedient that that wage is sufficient for the thrifty working man to be able to provide for his family. So that idea of taking the family into the house, I think it really has an analog in wage right now, right?
Yeah.
So the wage needs to be considered for the entire family, for his spiritual needs, and also it needs to be enough that he can save for the sake of getting productive property himself, right? That is the ability, and this is what is really tough. Like, companies need to have integrated into their ethos the idea that your purpose is for your workers to no longer need you. Like, you have to have a apocalyptic view of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, when you work, are you trying to create a relationship in which people have a dire dependence on you? Because that's what we did in our side of the Rust Belt, right? Companies came in, they provided a pretty good wage, they made thousands of people completely dependent on them for every aspect of their livelihood.
Yeah.
Then they left.
And our town went from 87,000 to 17,000. People, that is.
Yeah.
Well, but here's
Okay,
why I would not push back on this principle, because it's right. If you own a company, you need to raise your wages. Here's the problem with just the feds telling people to raise their wages. One is that, well, actually, if you do this universally, it doesn't really matter all that much.
Right.
But places like when that happened in Seattle and testing out raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, a lot of companies ended up just not going there. But that's not too big of a problem. The bigger problem was that the prices of property skyrocketed. So it actually, people were smart enough to realize that if people are getting paid more, if the lower classes are getting paid more, then they could start to afford the houses and gain productive property themselves, but not wanting to lose it. The capitalists ended up raising the prices of everything, buying up more things. And so it actually it increased inequality as a result. Marc's depressed. Where are you going?
I hate it. It's a bad world, Donatus.
It is a bad world. So that's why I'm saying it can't be necessarily a state imposed operation. Maybe if it was universalized, you could get there a little bit. But I think that it really would just increase the prices of various assets.
Which would at least
assets.
confirm what we started out by saying, is that there's no way around gift.
Right. Well, and this is what I'm saying, is that why it has to come to the job of the CFO or the CEO to raise the wages of the employees is because it really does take virtue. If it's just something that they're mandated to do, then they're going to find a way around it.
Yeah. And I guess really this is only point one, so we better hurry up. But basically,
well, just get around it by making your employees owners.
I know. I was
Number
say,
two.
That's the real thing. Like, wages are just this weird, like, momentary situation that really should be akin to almost charity.
Yeah.
Like, it's not quite, but it's almost charity. You need to get over it.
Yeah.
Get over wages.
Yeah.
Wages suck.
Yeah. The third thing is
second. We only did second.
No. That's
problems
wages.
Okay. Go.
So that they can themselves like save enough money to be able to get out of their bad situation of poverty. Second one is employee-owned companies.
Yeah.
Third one is buy up hundreds of thousands of acres and give them away.
Yeah.
You actually even don't need all that much. I mean, you could really have a family if they're cooperating with probably what do you think, 3 other families around them, survive on 3 acres.
Yeah.
If you're also bringing them animals.
Yeah.
So, and people say it's so expensive, all this stuff, and it's really not. You can have self-sustaining farms.
It's true. We got them here.
We got them here.
They rule. Okay.
Number 4.
Oh my gosh.
I went for the last 2.
What time is it? All right, hurry up. Go.
Number 4. We gave him 3. Number 4 is I would actually say that you need to find people who have business ideas that are not going to return a huge investment, or is pretty much going to buy them a job. I mean, that's a phrase that you hear a lot of times. It's like, you never want to invest in a company that only buys you a job. Sure, you're going to make $150,000 a year from this company, but that's pretty much just your salary at a good company. But you need to be able to actually, while that might not be a good investment for you, it's a great investment for somebody else. So buy people jobs. In other words, buy people their own companies.
Okay, I don't understand yet.
Somebody around here wants to start a screen printing company.
Okay.
It doesn't cost that much to be able to get the equipment.
Yeah.
Buy that guy the equipment that he needs.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and once and you might have to raise him up to say, you know, this is a commitment. You know, come work for me for a little while. I mean, this is what God's system was in his law in Leviticus. Like, when the person is a indentured servant, it's like you're teaching him how to be responsible at that point. He might have just fallen on hard times, but he also might have been foolish to get himself in those hard times. And to be a servant to your brother, you're learning again. You're learning responsibility. You're learning fidelity, patience, fortitude, real habits of soul that you need to be successful as a father and as the head of your personal economy of your household. So that guy might need some help. Give him that help, and then give him the seed money that he needs, and then don't expect that money back. Number 4.
Yeah. That's awesome. Number 5. The end of the challenge. It's the 9th inning.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are giving the fishing rod. Talked about giving actual property. No, that won't work. Oh no. Here's one.
Yep.
Exercise the habit of collective ownership. So I think that this is something that's crucially missing for a lot of people that think things like, because a lot of this can sound like the only people that have the power to really help are the wealthy who have the ability to give great gifts. So people that can be magnificent. And that's true. I mean, like, to be clear, the problems we have are because the rich are not being magnificent. So it's not disempowering to say that. It's not like saying like we're just all waiting on, the wealthy. It's like we are. That's because they're failing. Like, that's fine. But there is collective ownership is a way in which those without much capital, without much money, can get productive property for themselves if they have the ability to share. So it's a form of ownership which requires virtue, right? It does not work if you're vicious and you're actually after just private gain. Like, you have to have a commons with a common good in mind. And I mean, I think of things like going in on buying land that you can all use to farm, to produce, going in on common machinery that you can all use to.
So an example, so we have a space in our parish here that could be used as a commercial kitchen.
Right, absolutely. So this is a really good point. You mind if I try it? Because we have like 6 or 7 people in town, all of whom are perfecting the art of bread baking. The pandemic's been beautiful here. I've never eaten so well. Now they all have a skill, right? They've been taught to fish, as it were.
Yeah.
And even because they have other jobs and stuff, they have the means by which to fish, aka produce bread. But what's lacking is some of the really basic needs for being able to make that more profitable for them, so that it really tends towards greater ownership. And one of those things is just a commercial kitchen, because of the weird laws that we have. You can't sell bread without it coming from a commercial kitchen. Now, a commercial kitchen costs a lot of money. So people have the money they need to produce good bread, but weirdly, they don't have the money they need to produce it in such a way that they can sell the really good bread. And this is a huge problem with living in a kind of regulated industrial society, is that poor people cannot meet the requirements, not for the basic doing the thing, working hard, and producing the product, but for meeting the regulations by which that product is deemed safe.
Right.
And that is basically where these bakers find themselves. So the idea is simple. Churches in small towns almost inevitably have a commercial kitchen in their basement. Maybe this is just our part of the world, but it's incredible. Like, you will find like 3 ovens, the full freezer, the like the beautiful countertops, and like a range that has like 12 stoves because it's ready for pancake breakfast, or like the Knights of Columbus fish fry.
Yeah.
That is capital.
Yeah.
That is sitting there,
Yeah.
and often only gets used like once or twice a year when the knights finally fry the fish, and for the rest of the year it just sits.
Because they don't make the donuts.
Yeah.
They go to Dunkin' Donuts and get the donuts.
Okay, well, let's not call people out.
Sorry, dude.
Keep calling out the knights. We love the knights, sort of. But get a collective together, right? Start a little guild. Call it what you want. It's the Bread Bakers Guild of Rust Belt, Ohio. And work out a deal with your priest that you can use that kitchen every morning, every weekday morning or whatever. And then you're producing bread together, and then, go in together on some means of selling it, because you need some capital for a storefront. Maybe you need a delivery system, whatever it is. You can do it by combining what little resources you have. This is basic stuff. Like, you all have a little, put it in, make a lot, and then divide the profits.
Yeah, I like it. There's your 5 things.
Cool.
Here's the last thing, very quickly. If you don't do this, Rich, you inevitably come to this place where there is class warfare. And you hear this a lot. If the rich don't give, well, inevitably the poor come banging on the gates of their house. And that's not good. There are cases for just war, but war only comes about when virtue fails on one side or another.
Wow. Yeah.
And so this is a time when charity defeats that. Avoid war.
Yeah, I mean,
give gifts.
I certainly don't want the poor banging on my door.
That happens.
Actually, it does. But
because they know they'll get stuff from you.
Well, yeah, and they just. I live next to they moved recently, but a group home, which is a really bad program that was just stuffed 16 people with mental disabilities into one house and tried to profit off of the checks they received from the government. And they're great. And maybe that's another, and they knock on my door, which is great. And one of the things that I realize that we should probably discuss is the fact that there are people who need us and will not be able to learn how to fish.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that one of the things that we should never forget is that the habituation that comes with having children is not just for its own. It's not just for the sake of that kind of sending off, right? So we can talk this way and say like, oh yeah, it's for raising them up. It's for raising them up. No, yes, it is for raising them up, and that is the ideal. But we also live in this fallen world, right? So it's also a learning for how to be habituated to just simply giving, and to look at people and say, oh, you are an opportunity for me to simply give. And not, because if you don't have that learning, what we come to do is despise, I think, people that just need gift.
I think
right. We start to look at them and say like, oh, like you're kind of failing to thrive or somehow, right? Instead of bemoaning that as a result of the fall, and then saying, but look at what God has wrought. I now have an opportunity to grow by giving. And you have an opportunity to grow by receiving, and that's all we're going to have for this particular relationship.
That's huge. Yeah, we can't kill them like our children are old people, so we usually just export them away. Anyways, on that happy note, we'll see you next time.
All right. Well, that's a nice depressing way to end, Jacob. All right. Talked about fish today. We're going to talk about More Money Matters tomorrow. If you have any questions, right? If you want us to address something in particular on this podcast, shoot us an email. I'm Marc at New Polity. This is Jacob at newpolity.com. And let us know what we can discuss. I know nothing. Jacob knows some things. So together we'll tell you something good.
Bye.
Bye.